Hey, thanks for joining me. I hope you've watched some of my other vitamin videos. If you haven't, go check them out. There's vitamin A, B, C, D. Oh wait, no, today's A. Sorry. So today's vitamin A. Stick with me. I'll share with you what it is, and I'm also going to give you a little bit more information, not about my vitamin A, but about where my thought process from that comes if you want to learn a little bit more about it. All right, so today vitamin A stands for acceptance. This is a tricky one, but it is an important part of lots of things in life. And I don't want to speak too specifically to certain situations, but I think that we all could probably say or admit there's been things that have happened in our lives that it just kind of boils down to the point of acceptance. I'm not talking about grief specifically in this video, but I'm going to use that as a quick example of why acceptance is important. If you're familiar with grief at all, there's lots of different ideas and theories out there about that, but one is that we go through phases of grief, right? There's anger, sadness, bargaining, and eventually the theory of grief is that you get to a point of acceptance, of really just kind of a deep down, it's not like you get to this point where you're like happy about it, right? But deep down you get to a point of, you know what, I understand despite my grief really, or my overwhelming sadness, frustration, anger about this, I just have to reach this point of acceptance of, you know, it is what it is, right? And I know that sounds kind of defeating, right? When people say it is what it is, it kind of sounds like, well, shoot, we didn't do well with that one and there's no hope. That's not what it is, right? It's acceptance, really. It's getting to the point of, like I said, I don't like this, but I know this is the new reality. I know this is the case. I know this is the situation, and I know I can't change that. So my options are acceptance. And so it can be a really, really difficult thing, especially if the case is grief or loss or I don't know, something like that. Those are some big ones that pop up for acceptance. But it can be very freeing too. I know that sounds wild because, especially if you're maybe fresh in a place of grief or loss or something like that, that does not sound like what you want to hear. So maybe watch this video for later. If you're further along in it, you might be closer to that acceptance place and know that it's going to be hard. It's not what you want, but it can be very freeing to know, you know what, I don't like this, but I can't change this. And letting yourself free from trying to change it actually probably can give you some relief. I'm not saying you're going to be relieved about maybe the loss or grief that you've experienced, but when you can recognize, I don't have the power to control this, I don't have the power to change it, it takes that pressure off of you of wanting to do that, if that makes sense. There is in the 12 step, if anyone is familiar with the 12 steps for like Alcoholics Anonymous is the most common place people have heard of that. It's used in other therapies as well, or groups or things like that. But the 12 steps, one of the steps says, I accept the things that I cannot change, right? That's part of it. So that word accept is super powerful because going through recovery is another one that there's a certain amount of acceptance, right? And it might be related to the alcohol recovery part, and it might very well be related to something different in that person's life. But it's a part of that process. That acceptance is super powerful and necessary for full recovery, right? That's why, you know, if you're familiar with that program at all, you have to go through all the steps. You got to do all the things to get to a place that is recovery. And all of those steps are all to do with your emotional state. And I don't think it's coincidence that acceptance is one of the big steps. And vitamin A, acceptance, is necessary, whether I'm not saying this is only for if you're in recovery. It's necessary for all of us because we've all been through difficult, hard things in one way or another, and we might have to learn some acceptance that is hard, right? It's not easy, but like I said, I think it can get to a place where it really is freeing because you let yourself off the hook of trying so hard to control that thing that you really just can't. My last thing for you that I said at the beginning, I wanted to give you a little more information. If you want to dig more into this, there's in the psychology, therapy, counseling world, there's lots of different theories that counselors and therapists approach counseling with. So the most common that you probably hear of are like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or maybe DBT is more known. But whatever it is, acceptance and commitment therapy is another one that maybe is not as talked about as much. Some of you maybe have heard of it, some of you maybe not. But the very basic idea behind that one is kind of what I just explained, is that there's things that learning to accept that as a true reality or an objective thing or place or whatever is a freeing thing and really can be a healing thing at times. So I am not going to dig into that now. Maybe there'll be another video on that. But if you want to look more into acceptance and commitment therapy, even just for your own reading, I'm not saying you have to go to a therapist that does that, but even just for your own curiosity, there's lots of great information out there about acceptance and commitment therapy. So get yourself some vitamin A, learn to accept some things that might be really hard, and know that it's not a defeating place to be, it's actually probably a very freeing place to be. If you haven't checked out the other vitamins, check them out and hit all the buttons